All right, I think we should be live. It's been a while since we've done a virtual broadcast, so we appreciate your patience, everybody, and as we get going here. I'm Trevor Williams with Global Atlanta. You've been getting emails from us, from Aurora and myself, probably in advance of this event. We are, if you don't know what we are, I was explaining to some folks earlier, we are a news service here that covers international business here in Atlanta. We write about how Atlanta is connected to the global economy. So I think today our conversation is going to meander that way, and particularly with Mr. Dhingra, who's got a strong history of in the technology sector, and really a compelling story when it comes to bringing talent to Atlanta, and how that talent blossoms into leadership. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I should first of all thank our sponsors, the Atlanta Global Studies Center. If you don't know about the Atlanta Global Studies Center, it's a joint collaborative effort between nationally funded center connected between Georgia Tech and Georgia State. And if you know anything about academia, it's hard to get institutions to work together across silos. So it's a pretty phenomenal center. They've sponsored this what we call Authors Amplified series now for, I think, going on a year, and we've been very excited to host a lot of top-notch speakers. The thesis behind the series is that we have a lot of expertise in Atlanta when it comes to international relations, international affairs, international business, but sometimes it gets hidden. Sometimes it's hidden within the silos at the universities, or just not brought out in the same way that it should be. And so we wanted to kind of amplify those voices as much as possible and use books as a way to do that. I also wanted to thank our hosts here at Arnall Golden Gregory. Terry Simmons, thank you so much for hosting us here. And AGG has been a longtime partner of Global Atlanta. We very much appreciate their support over really more than a decade now, I think. And I know has had a relationship with Lalit and NIIT for a long time as well. So it was a great way to collaborate on this event. So I am going to do a quick introduction of Lalit. Now, I don't have my phone with me because we're broadcasting with the phone. So you're going to have to help me. I don't have your bio written down. So I do know that you were president of NIIT Technologies for the Americas and head of global alliances and partnerships. Yeah. Is that right? Did I get that right?
And the business.
And the business, of course, of course. But we're going to delve, and it had a 25-year career there.
28.
28, okay. I knew it was at least 25 because I read that in the book, but I didn't get the full number. But came over to Atlanta in what, 1997?
97 June 3rd, 1997.
Great. So probably have some unvarnished views of Atlanta in the 90s and how hard it might have been to get settled as a new arrival here. And we're probably going to talk about that a little bit. But what the baseline here we're talking about is Lalit's book, Driven, A Journey to Leadership. And it really recounts a lot of his life and business lessons. And I'm encouraging everybody here in the crowd to go get one. If you haven't already, get one after the talk, and have Lalit sign it for you. He's generous enough to do that for us. Are we still doing the COVID donation for the?
Yeah.
Okay. So the proceeds from the book sales, Lalit's proceeds will go to COVID victims in India. I think that's right. Correct. Okay. So always a good cause, and we're so grateful. Speaking of that, we're so grateful to be back into an in-person event. For those of us that are here, but of course we can't get rid of the convenience of the broadcast as well. So glad for those of you who are joining us remotely as well. So with all that out of the way, Lalit, I'm going to turn to you now. Hopefully we can hear okay and everything's going well. You outline in the book, I mean, it's chock full of leadership lessons, obviously. So I'm not going to make you recount all of those, but I wanted to get a little bit more about your history. So and bring that in to tie it into your leadership journey. Tell us first about your early life in India. Where are you from? What were your parents doing for a living? How did you get into the how did you kind of think about what your career would be early on?
Yeah, so I was born in 1957, so which was pretty early years of India independence. So you're talking about India got independence in 47. I was born in 57.
Oh.
So, the economy was totally different than what it is today. So when I did my schooling and, I was coming out of school, I wanted to become an engineer. And then nobody is very clear what you want to become. So I used to be fascinated with the fighter jets. So I said, I want to become a pilot. So
was that something you had early on as a child, seeing planes and stuff? I mean, because every kid loves planes,
loves
right?
something. Some kids love the cars, some kids love the planes.
Yeah.
So we never played with the planes because we were not, didn't have money to buy the toys, which are, the cars or the planes. But I used to see the planes in the sky and said, one day I want to fly the plane. So, and my dad was my hero because he used to support others in getting the land for the house. And he was running a non-for-profit organization.
But that wasn't his full-time job. Like, so
no,
your parents were both
that was part
hardworking people.
So he was 5 days, 6 days job, and one day on Sunday he used to work and get membership for people to get land.
Can I ask, push you on that a little bit? Like, what was driving his passion? Do you know, or did you find out later? Why was he so interested in helping people get their housing situation settled?
We used to question him why you are doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're busy 7 days a week. You're busy for so many hours. And he was saying, I want to support others. So at that time, I never understood the meaning. What do you mean by supporting others? So over a period of time, when you listen to him and then he says, I want to help him, I want to help him, there are certain things which came into head. That's a great thing because people used to talk good about him. So when you go out of the world and people start talking good about you, and when you are alive, people start talking good about you.
Yeah, exactly.
So then you feel that there is something in supporting others.
Right.
So that's where I thought he's my hero.
It's both pragmatic and
he's helping others. So how can I help others? That was at that time.
It's like the embryonic stage of career development.
In the sense that, okay, I see my parents working hard, just trying to make sure that the kids do well.
Tell us what they did for their jobs. I don't think you mentioned.
My dad was in postal service and my mother was teacher.
Okay.
So she was kindergarten to middle school. She retired as a principal. But those days, the salaries and the amount which we used to get was just sufficient to run the house. So that's where I said, I saw them working hard, which was sometimes it's like, how can I help them?
Yeah.
Because my dad used to say, help others, support others. And I used to say, how can I help them? And when I was we never knew how to build a career. I mean, just coming out of schools, the economy is not great in India. There was no many jobs. So we want to pick up something by which we can do a job. And then here I was saying, I want to become a pilot. So, and there was a written exam to become a pilot. So, which was purely mathematics and science. And I was good in that.
Yeah, those were your
so I cleared the exam and I got a letter from Indian Air Force that congratulations, you got selected for the next round of interviews and a huge list of physical, medical tests. So I said, great. So I looked at the conditions and one of the conditions was on your height. It was not about my total height. It was about my leg length.
Really?
Yeah. So they had specific. So maybe I was not proportionate enough. or you call it.
Well,
whatever.
you would think they would have told you that before you took the written test.
Yeah, I mean, but that's good. So I said, okay. I mean, I was 1.5 centimeter. My leg length was shorter than what the requirement was. So I couldn't blame parents for that. I just said, okay. I was disappointed because I wanted to become that. I cleared the exam and I have nothing now to look for. And I didn't go for the interview, obviously, because you will go there and you will get knocked out.
They'll measure you.
So there's no issue.
There's no hiding.
So then I met one of my teachers, and he said very important thing, which really stuck in my mind, which is one of the big lesson I got, that he says, don't get disappointed if you didn't get that. So he used a statement called, if one door closes, the other opens.
Right.
And I was very disappointed. I said, what is he saying?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean? I mean, the door is closing means it's closed, as far as I'm concerned. But that stuck into my head.
Mm-hmm.
And that became, because if I look back now, 42 years or 44 years back, I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
What I am today, maybe that's the destiny I have.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the other doors which got open for me, which was that, which was closed.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had another closed door when you were looking into engineering schools. And
so
your parents had some trouble affording the one that you actually got into.
Yeah, my dad was a great dreamer. I mean, he used to say, look, I have so many difficulties in life. So I want my 2 children to be doing well. I want one of them to be a doctor and one of them to be engineer. I said, great. I mean, we used to listen to his dream and say, okay, let's work hard towards that. Probably my brother did work hard, so he got into medical school. I didn't work that hard, so I didn't get into the school. So he could only afford me in Delhi College of Engineering, which was in Delhi and had little fees, not much.
Yeah.
It's like Georgia people going to Georgia Tech is easy. Then somebody from outside coming to Georgia Tech has to pay full fees, right? Mm-hmm. So then I got admission into another school, engineering school. It's called Birla Institute of Technologies and Sciences, which is BITS, Pilani. It's outside 100 miles from Delhi. And I looked at their prospect and their fees. And I said, I don't want to go to my dad saying that give me this fees, because he doesn't have it.
Right.
He can't afford it. So I declined the offer from BITS. And then I was I just closed the room and said, what do I do? Because I didn't become a pilot. And I had this quote, one door closes, the other open. And now the second door closed. What do I do?
Yeah.
Then I came out and said, okay, I have to become an engineer, whatever happens.
Yeah.
So that was very firm in my head that I will become. Maybe the path is different.
Was that motivated by your desire to please your dad? Is that
no? It was
or was it more just your skill set you knew was geared toward that?
No, because once your parents start seeing a dream about you, and you believe that you can achieve it, and you don't get a path in which you can achieve it, you feel more motivated that I have to, not for him, but I have to do it.
Right. Prove it to yourself in a way.
Prove it to yourself that you are capable of doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I went into mathematics, from mathematics to operational research to IIT Delhi, and then I became an engineer.
What was operational research? Because that was like a new field at the time.
That was at that time.
I don't even know if I know what it is now.
So in the mathematics, there were 2 branches. People used to go into what they call pure mathematics or statistics. There were 2 major. And third was how you put operational research as a third branch of maths, which came up at that time. So I always wanted to do newer things.
Right.
That was my thinking, that let me go into this field. So that's how I went into operational research. We didn't have Google at that time to search, what operational research do. So I had to go and meet people. So I went to one company called STC, or State Trading Corporation in India, and I met some people and say, what do you mean by operational research? What do they do? So he gave me an example of how operational research is used in certain areas. I said, that sounds very interesting. So let me choose it. And I met the professor.
I was going to say that was one of your corridors that you followed.
Yeah, that was a door which got opened. And the professor was my mentor.
Dr. Puri?
Dr. Puri was, he's an outstanding guy. So he gave me a lot of encouragement to do things. And he says, push me towards operational research. And I got 100% marks in the first exam. He says, look, I told you you're good. I said, I didn't know. He says, I checked your paper. And I didn't find a single place to get a single mark. So I was thinking, I was trying to see, how can I give you 99? And I couldn't. So this is the destiny for you. Go into operations.
And then he encouraged you to apply for something that was very, very low odds of getting accepted.
I think that was luck, to be honest with you.
What was it? I mean, because you already had 2 doors closed, and then he's telling you to go for something that's got, I think it was 15 positions out of 1,000 applicants.
It was at that time, IIT Delhi was one of the very prestigious institutes. I mean, there are 5 IITs at that time in India, and Delhi was one of the top institute. It's like getting into MIT with very bad degree or something. You know, you don't have a good SAT and you want to get into it. So I just thought this is the last chance for me to get into engineering. So I went to Dr. Puri and said, Dr. Puri, I want to apply for IIT Delhi. He says, do it. I said, I have probability of getting me is less than 1%. He says, why you say that? I said, I went there and I saw the list of people who are applied. There are around 1,000 people applied for it. And there are 15 seats. What do you think my odds are? He says, and he spent a lot of time with me. He says, you know, you should look at your positives. Don't look at the outside world, because you can't control that. So I applied. And I was called for the written test. It's like this room, the way, the huge rooms, and you get a question paper, and we're doing the exam. There are 4 written tests. And in one question, to be honest with you, I didn't know any one of the answers. One of the question paper, there were 10 questions, and they're all A, B, C, or D, or none of the above kind of stuff. I don't know what I did. I didn't know the answers, but 3 papers I did know the answers. So 3 I did well. The 4th one I just said
a prayer,
something
Christmas
like
tree,
And then obviously I didn't get the high ranking in the written exam. I got the ranking, which was kind of good enough for me, because they had 56 people they wanted to interview out of the 1,000, and 900 or 1,000 at that time. I was at least made to the 56. I was 52nd. So in the list. I said, what chance do I have now? So that's where I said luck came into when I went for an interview, there were 4 professors. It was like very tense interview, because they were to choose 15 best people who can do the course. And he asked me a question, last question, which was something to do with assemblers. I mean, if the people who are in technology understand it. And I said, how can this question? Because last 1 year, I'm working on the same thing. So last 12 months, I've spent time on assemblers and writing assemblers and doing all the stuff. And he's asking that question to me. What a basic question, At that time, I was an expert, and he's asking me a basic question. He says, can you explain it on the board? I went there and, I know how to write it. I can write it also for you. And then they were all surprised, because they thought they're asking tough questions. And here is a guy who's telling them, okay, how to do it and telling right. So then they said, okay, thank you very much. The interview is over. Then you have to wait till evening, because the interviews happen in the morning. You have to wait till evening, 7 o'clock. And they said, we're going to put a list. So I was saying, I'm not going to make it because I'm 52nd. I don't know what's going to happen. One of the professors came out and asked him, sir, do you think I should stay or shall I go home? Because I want to be very blunt and saying, if you want to go home, I'll take the bus and go home. He says, you definitely stay. And that gave me a lot of confidence that, maybe I might have a chance. So when the list came, I was starting looking from the down and said, okay, where I am in the 15th. Actually, I was number 1. So that's where I called luck. I mean, if I had some other question, maybe I not made it. Or maybe I was not number 1. But if you realize, if you work hard, the luck follows you.
So where was it in this progression that you were working for your uncle's restaurant?
That is when I was studying. So when I was doing my graduation.
Tell us about that and what you learned from working at the restaurant. Because it's one thing to know all the highly technical stuff. It's another thing to know that kind of setting.
So there was one time when Dad came to me and said, I think I need your help, because I think we're struggling financially. because my brother was going into medical school and the fees was higher and the books were expensive. So I said, okay, I have to find a job, which is along with my study, I can do it. And then I went to my uncle who runs a restaurant in Delhi, and it is very near to a theater. It was just across the road from a theater. And so all the people who goes to theater used to come to that restaurant. So he says, I can give you work. I don't want to come in the morning at 6 o'clock to open the restaurant. And you can do that. You can open it. You can clean up, and then up to 8 o'clock you can work. And I used to have my school or college from 9 o'clock. So I can take an hour to reach to the college, and 6 to 8 I can work. And then he says, if you want more money, I can give you 25 for the morning and 25 for the evening. I'm talking about less than $1 at that time in that rate. So I said, great. I mean, that will take care of my fees in the school. So I told Dad, I'm all set. I'm going to do that. So I learned a lot of stuff there. I learned how to cook. I learned how to make omelets. I knew how to make snacks, Indian snacks. I definitely know how to make tea because it was a tea restaurant. And
but
it was a 4-year journey.
Yeah. Well, one thing you mentioned in the book is you realize how interrelated all the different tasks were in the restaurant. I mean, right? And that was a lesson for later on, I think.
Which is when you go to a restaurant, you feel that you want a good food, you want a good service, right? So if you don't get a good service, even if you get a good food, you may not go back to the restaurant. So I realized that. So some days I used to tell there was a servant in the restaurant. So I used to tell him, you take care of the clients, I'll take care of the cooking. And sometimes because I used to see that how he's behaving with the clients is not always consistent, because depends on his mood. Whereas I learned that you cannot not consistent. So then I said, okay, I can make a tea. I'll take it out to a customer and ask him what else he needs. So all this,
it's all connected. If one part of the experience is bad, the whole thing is going to be seen as bad.
I was a guy who was taking money. So I was a cashier, I was a cook, and I was a waiter giving the tea and stuff to the. So that I realized it's important in any business. Any part of the business has to run consistently and is interconnected. If you miss one, you're in trouble. That's where I learned, the concept of you can't leave something in between.
Right. Yeah, and every piece is important too. That's going to play into how you treat your employees and staff.
So that was another very good part of journey, and that things started happening. I said, okay, I got restaurant, and then somebody came to restaurant for a cup of tea. He liked the way I make the tea and give him the omelette and all. He's very happy with me, and he says, "Are you studying?" So he called me, "Kid, are you studying?" I said, "Yeah, I'm studying, and I want to earn money also." He said, "You're working hard. Why don't you teach 6th standard or 7th standard students
math?
What you're good? So mathematics. I was good at maths. I was like very good at maths.
I don't think that came through in the book. That's how you got the
yeah,
math
that's what
tutor.
I got teaching math students. And suddenly what happens? People started coming to me. They said, "Okay, in this area, this guy teaches math." Then I said, "I have a lot of money now." I have extra. I'm money from my clothes.
It's funny when you're in college how much you think is a lot of money.
A lot of money from that perspective.
Yeah, I remember those days myself. It wasn't that long ago. So sounds like you were able to build a lot of soft skills through a lot of different avenues, right? What you call soft skills, and you say this is sort of an underrated skill set. And I was wondering if you could talk about that in just today's environment, maybe in the technology world. Do you feel that we're not preparing people on that side of the coin? Maybe we're giving them the coding abilities or the degrees that they need, but are we teaching people those things that will make them successful in the long run?
I think what you're saying is right, because we're not preparing people for the jobs. We're preparing people for the entry to a job. Right? So even on our time, it was entry to a job. So you have a degree, you go and get a job.
Right.
What you learn on the job training is different than what you learn in the school. And I'm talking about in my days, obviously it was very difficult. Nowadays, there's a lot of changes that happened now. So what we learned was how to, so you have to become from a college buddy to a office professional.
Overnight.
Nobody teaches you that, how to do that. Because sometimes we get out of the college and we want to teach, or we want to treat other people in the business the same way the way we treat in the college. It's a different. So you cannot be that buddy then with your with your co-workers. So I realized that's missing. And then there are a lot of things I learned in the first 6 years of my business. And I said, that's a skill nobody's teaching you. So that's what I'm telling in the book, is that with any environment, industry and the education are not connected. Whatever we say, they're connected. If you say from a medical school perspective, yes, they are, because every medical school has a hospital attached to it. So the people learn and experiment on the other people. Right? That's how, and they learn in practical way. But if you look at engineering schools or pure sciences, people go to school, but they don't have any industry attached to them. So they go to industry to do some program for 3 months, 6 months, even for a year. But that's not sufficient for them to learn those skills, which are important for them to grow. So the leadership skills, which are the soft skill, or the skills which are not taught anywhere, are important.
And so I'm kind of hearing you say, if you can learn that, I am inferring, if you can learn those things before you get into the corporate world or the job market, then you're going to have a leg up on those people who are coming out of college directly and may not have those soft skills. And what do you see as being the most important soft skills? You talk a lot about communication.
So the communication is there, empathy is there, and how you inspire yourself to do jobs is very important. How to collaborate, how to be transparent. So one of the things which I realized, the most important thing was communication and the transparency which comes in. I mean, we are seeing across the globe now. There's a lack of these skills. People are not transparent at all. I mean, I'm not saying people, I'm not generalizing. I'm saying most of the leaders, whether it's a political or whether it's the CEO of a company or the head of a business, they're not very transparent to the people. You don't have to tell everything, but you have to be transparent on something.
You can't burden your employees with all the stresses of your leadership role, but you have to.
So I said, this is not, you can't teach that. You can only experience it.
This leads to one of my other questions, because you've called this a journey to leadership, right? And we position leadership as something you can learn in a course, a 3-day retreat, or a book, right? Like we're reading a book. But you really talked about it in the book as a true journey. Like you have to have the experience to be able to gain these skills. There's really no other way to teach it, and I think in your view. But the question there becomes, if this leadership skills are gained mainly through experience, how do you prepare people that don't have the experience yet?
No, there are two things. One is that how you experience it, and one is how somebody has sensitized you about the skills. If you take leadership courses today, I mean, I'm advisor to the Scheller Business School in Georgia Tech. I know what the leadership course look like there, right? So one is you tell what is important. So all leadership courses, all leadership books are trying to preach you and tell you what you need. But nobody tells you how to get it. Right? That you have to experience it. So if somebody tells me, be a transparent, that's a great skill. To be a transparent, there'll be 10 pages somebody will write on it. But nobody tells you how to be transparent. Or how do I make that happen?
Or how to balance. You talk about the balance between approachability and authority.
Yeah,
right?
So that is also important. So now you can only experience that. You cannot say, somebody says, here's a formula, you read it. There's no formula for it. But that's why when I wrote this book, I didn't want to preach. Because there's so many books were preaching about leadership. Hundreds of them. But I am saying my experience may be different than your experience, but you will achieve what you have to achieve to get the best soft skills.
Yeah. And you sort of position like the leaders that you learn the most from are the ones that made you figure things out on your own.
Yeah, that is my I think the differentiation. I realized that most of the CEOs with I work, or most of the leader I worked, some of them were everybody's different. So some people come and call you in the cabin, close the door, and tell you this is what you should do. Right. If I have a question, I can go and answer, and they can say, okay, here is the answer, do this way. That's many of these were like that. Many of my project managers were like that when I was growing up. The one thing which I learned is that you cannot learn if you give me a solution. You can only learn if I find a solution on my own. And that's where I find 2 or 3 mentors of mine who said, I'm not going to give you the answer. Even when I was programmer, this gentleman his name is, I've not changed his name. His name is M.N. Diwakar. He died 3 years back because of cancer. He was my first boss. And I went to him and I said, I'm a young fellow. I don't know how to program this. I'm struggling. He said, I know the answer, but I won't tell you. I said, what kind of boss he is? He's not telling me. I'm struggling. He says, look, struggle more. Find out the answer yourself. And that's where I learned that such a powerful thing, because he has actually guided me to find a solution. It is not about he's not supporting me. He supported me, but he asked me to find a solution. I found it. I felt good about it. Now, when I became manager, I became leader, I said the same thing. And people used to get irritated with it. So somebody asked me a question, I will cross question. Somebody asked me a question. So the people have started, this guy doesn't know anything. Because he's asking the same question back to us. But actually then over a period of time, people started realizing that how powerful that method is.
Well, that's interesting, because you're leading perfectly into my questions here, because you have so many conversations written out in the book. It's kind of a Socratic sort of recounting of these impactful conversations that you've had. And I wondered how you, I'm assuming that what you just described is the reason for that, because you saw this to be an effective method of communication. But why did you frame it like that in the book? I mean, did you want to just give a sense for how you've learned to best communicate?
See,
like you have your daughter, the conversation with your daughter.
So there's a lot of conversation in the book. So I didn't see any other book like that, good or bad, whatever. But this way of Scotic way of working is mostly in the dialogues. So you question and I question, you question me back, I question you back. So it's a dialogue between 2 people, right? And that's the learning process. That's the communication way of managing the discussion. That's, and never use. It was very little used on the books. It's mostly used on the conversation, dialogues, panel discussions, questions, and all those things. So I thought when I was writing book, I said, how do I portray it? How do I tell either I should write, these are the soft skills, this is, and this is your way to do it. That's preachy. I mean, everybody does it. The other is dialogue. Either it could be a dialogue with myself. So I'm asking a question, I'm answering a question. That's one way of doing it. Or there are certain things happen which were actually genuine stories. So shall I put a story? So now every story which I put in, there are some built in and there were some actuals. And I said, okay, here is what I want to portray. And this is the dialogue I'm going to have with this person.
Work backwards from that.
And then I created the story out of it. So that becomes a different way of writing a book.
One thing I found interesting though is that you had so many, I mean, it was literally full of examples. This is a real world example where I had this situation with this employee and you remembered it all. I mean, I don't know how much you plumbed the depths of your own memory to write the book, but to me, it's hard to remember those interpersonal encounters. And I think that kind of says something about you and your style, that you internalize that moment that sort of teachable moment and kind of were able to come back to it.
Yeah, I was lucky to remember many of the stories, to be honest with you. And I think I mentioned Dheeraj.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that name I didn't change. Terry worked with him also.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And he and I used to have a lot of good conversations on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I was his mentor from office and all perspective. So all the stories which we had were actual our discussions.
Yeah.
And they were, some of them I changed it because we didn't want to get into trouble.
Right,
So we just wanted to make sure that, we remain within the boundary. And I actually asked him.
Mm-hmm.
So first we thought we'll change his name.
Yeah.
And then we decided, I went to him and I said, Dheeraj, I don't want to change your name because there are so many good conversations we had and I want to put that into the book.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, I learned from you, but what will happen? I said, if I put somebody else's name, if people who know me read the book, they will know it's you.
Yeah, exactly.
So best is to put your name.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this will be my last question. I'm going to ask y'all, if y'all have questions, please think and get ready to raise your hands. Also, we have questions, the ability to have questions through the chat function on the broadcast. So I'll bring the microphone over to Aurora and have her read that. I'm actually going to switch this mic right now to this whole thing here. But you talked about you're talking about these were natural dialogues. These were not something that was forced. This was not something in a seminar. It was through the course of working with Dheeraj and others that you came to these lessons. You had some interesting thoughts on that too, with how you kind of build diversity in your workforce and kind of confront your biases. And I know that's something that people are talking a lot about right now. And you had this methodology. You have a lot of methodologies in there, but you said socialize to humanize. And I wonder if you can explain that, what you mean about that in the context of bias and diversity.
So if you look at a leadership book, they're saying, okay, you hire brilliant people, build your team, and do team building exercise, and you have a great team.
Right.
That's and leave them alone, so that they can deliver. But there are biases which sets in. I've talked about various biases. For small biases, and if you're Southern India, then Northern India has a different, thinking, and so all those things were there when I was manager in India on the development side. So when I came here, I realized that there's a diverse team. There's a woman, there is American, there is Indian, then they have all this team and they have to work together. And then we realized it's the same kind of biases. I could sense it. The biases are there because as human, we have the biases, internal biases, which we never show it, but sometimes it comes out.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, how do I do it? And then I realized one manager, brilliant guy, and there's another manager. And both have to work together, but they never used to like each other because there's some biases. This guy is coming from eastern side of country in India. He always like that. He always speak like this. So then I said, what do I do? I can't do a team building exercise. Go in a rafting tour or go take them to a casino in Vegas and do whatever you want. But I don't think those things work. You can't remove the biases. So then I said, okay, these 4-6 people come home for dinner. They used to surprise the first time I did say, why boss is calling us for a dinner? I said, no shop talk, come home. So listen to the music, whether it's a Bollywood music or other music, you just, come home and sit down and then they have nothing to talk about the office. That is banned on those at those parties at home. And just enjoy the food, discuss anything apart from the office.
Yeah.
So these two people started discussing music because there's some songs going on at home. And then they started, and this guy says, I'm a great singer too. And then, so one is a woman and one is a man. So this guy said, I'm a great singer. This lady said, sing a song. So he started singing a song. He says, you're really good. And then they started discussing about, the ABC of music. Yeah. Which I'm not good at, but these people were, and suddenly they became friends. Yeah. By the end of the evening, the next day, the biases had gone. They were focusing on the work, and then I started doing that. So I said, how do I get human part out of them? It's more important.
Yeah.
So it's not about the office, not about where you come from, which part of the world you are from, whether you're black or you're white or, all those things, you forget it. You just focus on the human side of you.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, socialize to humanize. So how do you socialize to make sure that you're getting the human part of it?
Yeah.
And that worked for me.
Creating
at least for me. I don't know.
Creating natural ways for people to get together.
Rather than taking them on a tour and spending money and saying, okay, no, this is what you should do. I mean, most of the American companies spend millions of dollars on doing that. I didn't want to not do that also.
Right.
But I'm just saying that, so the one thing which I did was, even when our meetings, formal meeting finishes at 6 o'clock in the evening, from 6:30 onward, you are drinking, you are not talking the business. And you make groups. Whether you want to play cards, play cards.
Yeah.
So even people play cards in the evening. I mean, that was not allowed in the conference room. I said, do it. But don't talk shop.
Yeah. Good.
That's how I think the team got built.
Well, there's a lot we could talk about with team building as well. You wrote extensively about that. I did want to open it up to, if anybody has questions. I think we have one coming in from online, so I'm going to hand this to you.
All right, this is from Murad. It says, what advice would you have for graduating students who may be contemplating various career options domestically and internationally?
So advice for graduating students contemplating career options here, domestically or internationally. And advice for graduating students thinking about careers either here or overseas.
Do whatever they like. I mean, nobody can stop anybody doing whatever they feel good about it. Give you example of my own son. He graduated from Georgia Tech. He wanted to do something. And I said, okay, go ahead and do that. And after 5 years, he says, I want to go to Europe to do work. I said, do it.
Yeah.
Because anything, whether you're domestic or overseas, it's getting experience. So whatever experience you want, you can get it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too. Okay, we've got one in the back. I'm loaded with lots of ammunition, so in case y'all are quiet, here you go. I'm having you ask this so that people on the call can hear.
Yeah, right. So I got a question concerning biases. I think that was pretty interesting, but I got a question especially for young people who want to become leaders, whether it's managing a company or only a smaller team, whatever. Because I see it, I got some friends who, one of them started a small company back at home. They sell like those COVID tests, and they usually only work with other young people. But in your book, you say it's important to have diverse teams to get different perspectives and opinions, and that makes sense to me. But they said, listen, yeah, working with older people is sometimes difficult because they don't respect you or whatever. Would you like use the same principle of socialize to humanize, or do you have any special tips for young leaders to overcome those age biases?
No, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
Actually, if I got that, okay, how to work with generations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, typically that's where it's a big challenge today. So it's very, very interesting. So the biases can be from the age perspective also. And the biases can be your physique also.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I mentioned in the book.
Yeah. The same as me bias.
Same as me bias. You know, that is there. And it is because the experienced people, I don't call them older people, I call them experienced people. More experienced people versus the less experienced people versus the Gen X and Gen Ys and all this stuff, right? So there are, because look at it from the perspective that both are coming from a different perspective in life. So one is coming from saying, in my days, this used to happen. You know, and my experience is my days. That's how I look at it, experience journey. The new generation so what they're coming from, because they have so much of knowledge already with them, right? So they have the Google and they have everything, and that they understand it, and the colleges have become so different than what it used to be. So they believe that we know better than them because we understand the tools better than the old people or the experienced people know it. So the only thing which I tell them is that if these two generations talk to each other like this, that if John is sitting and if she's sitting there, she's got a different experience. He's got a different experience. The only thing he has to say, what you have tool today, I built it. So previous generation built the tools for the next generation, and you're going to build for the next generation. So then if you start removing the biases and create a kind of respect for each other, it is not that I'm not going to respect the younger person. It may not come across, right? Or I say, these young people, they don't understand it. That is one way of looking at it. The other way is that, okay, I think he's got a brilliant idea. How do I learn from this new thing? So, and that's, you can start, the more dialogues you have, the biases will go away. And then there is a respect for each other. So when I did the NIIT stuff, when I came in 97, so you're talking about 25 years back. So in 25 years, when I was there, the company was like doing simple stuff when we started, and now became digital by the time I left. So for the digital, we were trying to hire young people from Georgia Tech or other schools. To manage that was not easy. And not because of me, or it's because of other experienced people in the company. They said, you know what? So I said, learn from them. Don't teach them.
So suspend your arrogance on both sides, I guess.
It's a problem. It's a major challenge in the industry today.
I was going to, okay, got Devika back here. Hold on one second. Let me bring this to you. Yeah. It's just on the Zoom call.
Yeah. I was going to ask, how do you think leadership is going to change, especially as we're hearing a lot about the Great Resignation and this new work from home hybrid, meeting like employees' expectations where they are, but also trying to lead the company and be realistic in those expectations? So how do you think leadership will pivot, if you will, or how should leaders pivot?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very good question. Actually, I just 2 months back, I wrote an article on this Great Resignation topic in LinkedIn. It's a great challenge for leaders today. It's a very big challenge. I think what is missing, our leaders missed in the last 2 years, is empathy. That's the big thing, because they're saying, the leaders use people to get the things done. Most of the companies use people to get the things done, and then they don't care about them. When the COVID hit, then you have to be empathetic to them, because there's a lot of things happen in their life, apart from just not that everybody got COVID, but because of that, the money went down, the jobs, at that time they lost the jobs and all this stuff. So if the leaders showed empathy to saying, go into their shoes and say, okay, what are they facing? If they're able to figure that out and say, okay, how can I help him or her to do job better than what they are doing today? Whether it's a hybrid model, whether I can say, okay, take a break and come back. So they don't resign from the job. They might take a break and come back.
Well, it kind of seems like it put everybody on an equal playing field in a way too, because we're all stuck at home. We're all having to log in remotely. We're all kind of.
There has to be some empathy to the person who's on the other side. So what leaders get preoccupied is, how many people I lost? How do I get those people? How do I get this talent? So getting a talent, I go to a recruiter, get a person. How do I do that? How quickly they're spending time on that. And then they're spending time on, oh my God, I got 10 more people resign today. How do I manage it? So and they don't have time to talk to these people. So they're not spending energies to figure out, the company is doing more for them. It's not that every leader is like that. I'm just saying that that's where the only answer is, how do I connect to the person?
Double down on empathy.
On that.
Yeah.
Do more, not artificial.
Yeah.
So because people do artificial stuff also, we don't have to do that. But be genuine about
Madan, did you have a question? Okay, one sec.
Mr. Lalit, you were born in 1957. So by 1977, you might be in your college. And that was one of the most difficult phase of India's history also. Like there was a lot of social strife, distress in the society, plus there was an emergency also.
Yeah.
So did those experiences have any effect on your thinking about the leadership, or in any way it affected your thinking?
No, I think if you look at it from 77 to 85, that was a difficult period for India. We didn't understand the so-called emergency at that time, because we were too young to understand that. We call it political, and then the India used to be having this leadership, which was like the great leader. I mean, she was a great leader anyway. Some wrong steps, but now we realize that okay, there were some wrong steps, but at that time we were young, we're just focusing on our studies and doing whatever it is. Between 84, when she was assassinated, that was a tough period, and the questions came: why? What's happening? Why biases against one religion? Why biases against the Sikhs at that time? Those are the questions. I said, there should be anguish. Why this is happening? Because they're also the neighbors. I mean, you just go and put somebody's house on fire because they're Sikhs. That was wrong. And we just realized that was not a good time then we were like, I was 26, 27 at that time. And I was getting married. And I was upset because my marriage got postponed by 6 months because of that.
Wow. Well, I want to come back to your decision-making process with I have one more question, but I think John had one, and then we're going to probably close it out. So anybody put your questions in the chat as well.
Yeah. So Lalit, I'd just be interested in one of your, your most challenging leadership-ish challenges, and maybe a situation where a group of employees were not engaging well and you kind of found the problem and worked through it.
Well, you need to read the book, because there's about 40 of those in the book.
One example was when I think 9/11. That is where one of the leaders came and says, I can't do this business, because the whole airline business was in trouble. So I had a vertical called airline and transportation. And she said, I don't know what to do. I said, if you're asking me that question, I also don't know what to do. So let's figure it out, what we can do. Because we're losing customers, we are losing people, and people have no faith that this airline industry will come back.
That was also after Y2K, right?
No, Y2K was not that much. I mean,
it's not as bad
but
as
I think 9/11 was very impactful. Very, very impactful, because it has a lot of issues. It has issues of the Indian company versus non-Indian company. It had transportation vertical just went down. So I think it was challenging. The most challenging leadership time I had was during that.
One more question on the chat.
So this question is from John McIntyre at Scheller. And he asked, do you think leadership qualities are different for consulting, entrepreneurship, and working for a well-established company?
I'll take example of well-established executive leadership. They are different than the startups or the entrepreneur when you're starting up your own, because I've seen both now. In the executive, you get a lot of support because you have systems set up. So the leadership gets support. They have investments to do whatever they want to do with the money or investments, and make things happen. And they're more they're thought through reasons of doing whatever they want to do, because they have checks and balances. In the startup or in your own entrepreneurship, you don't have those investments and the checks and balances. So you are the boss, you are the person who's setting up your computer, you are the person who's doing everything. So in that case, you feel that you're frustrated sometimes, and you become a little more arrogant sometimes. So whereas in executive leadership, it's more thought through. and more
Yeah,
clear.
yeah. Yeah, and I think you know, it's hard to manage yourself, right? Like you're usually your hardest employee to manage.
Yeah, I mean, so if you see a lot of startups, the youngsters who are bringing the startups, I think what they should do is get advisors who can help them to grow.
Exactly.
And
Well,
that's what is happening now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, this will be my last question. If anybody has a short one, maybe we can get to it. But you talked about in the book, and this gets at entrepreneurship versus an established company, because you kind of got the chance to be an entrepreneur for an established company when you came here for NIIT. But it was a really wrenching decision for you, I think, because your father had just passed away. You were well established in India. You were married. You had your family. Like, how did you make that decision to take the leap across to the U.S.? Because I think you get to these crossroads in life, and you don't know which road you're going to take, and you don't know whether you're making the right decision in the moment. So I think, especially for young people, how did you make that calculation? Because that's really how you ended up where you are.
No, it was not a well thought through process, to be honest with you. I was well established, both of us. My wife was doing good. I mean, the passing away from my father was one of the trigger points. And my board was talking about, because I was traveling across the world and establishing software companies in Europe as well as in Asia. So they were saying, okay, US is not doing good. We should do something in the US. And that's time when I was coming here more often than a lot of other people were coming in. So I knew the culture. I knew a little bit about US. I knew how to drive in the US also. That was a bigger thing at that time. So my boss, when my dad passed away, and then after 3 months, he says, we want somebody to manage the business in the US. We have almost zero business, and the board has decided to send you.
Great.
So I said, I didn't know the answer. I said, you give me time to think. So I come home and I don't discuss with my mom. I don't discuss with my wife. I just sit down and say, okay, what do I do? The guilt of, passing away from my dad, whether I took the guilt and said, I didn't help him. Maybe he would have been alive.
Yeah, you thought you could have taken him sooner to the hospital.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. And then I said, every time I come home, I have this guilt. Let me take a step back. And and I got this opportunity. It's a big opportunity. Leading US operations for a company, and the operation is only about $500,000, to grow it.
Yeah.
And that was a great challenge, because I was a technocrat, and I was kind of moving to the business was a big thing for me, big step for me. So when I discussed with my wife, and she's wonderful, and she said, let's do it. And if you want to do it, I'm supporting you. Spoke to my mom. I brought her here in November to meet my brother in Boston, and I showed this is how the US looks like. And she says, wherever you live, I'm fine with it. And the only condition of my coming was that I'm not going to leave you alone there. So I had to arrange visas and everything for her to get her here.
Yeah.
And it all worked out. There were some challenges, not some huge challenges, but
I was going to say, coming in 1997, it wasn't as well established of a pathway, and you talk about that in the book as well. But so we all should be grateful that we've had the path that we have, and we're grateful for you sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate it. I'm going to ask everybody to give you a round of applause, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Hear that on the call. Thank you again, and I do hope that we can stay in touch and continue to talk about these issues.
Thanks to Global Atlanta for
Thanks.
arranging this.